People who like to explore abandoned buildings. What was the biggest fuck this I'm out moment you had while exploring? I do urban exploring quite frequently and nothing ever makes us leave instantly apart from dodgy floors or squatters. However, 5 years ago me and a few friends explored a derelict farmhouse without buildings which had evidently been left for decades with the state it was in. After having a look around the place and finding nothing but empty buildings, we had a look inside what appeared to be an old stable. Inside was literally hundreds of empty tins of cat food, some nooses tied to a beam and a fairly new pair of scissors with a brownish crust covering the blades. The smell was putrid. We ventured further into the building and noticed on the flood was a cat's tail and a few cat's paws which had been dismembered and left on the floor. We swiftly exited and on our way out a pickup pulled up onto the side of the farm, bearing in mind it was surrounded by woods and fields with no track leading to it, with 3 men stood in the bed. Needless to say we got out of there as quick as we could and haven't seen or heard anything about it. The farm went on the market and sold earlier this year, so it would be interesting to see who previously owned it. Used to break into this old abandoned children's hospital with some friends when we were teens. One time, I think perhaps the last time, there was a fresh, child-sized handprint in the dust on a wall, and what seemed like blood droplets / spray nearby. Me friends and I used to smoke weed at an abandoned school frequently. All the doors and windows were boarded up except for the mail slot, and for some reason one of my friends decided to look inside. He exclaimed "Holy shit," so we all took turns looking in. Inside was a group of masked men. We weren't sure what they were up to, but we got out of there. I think they were looking for computers or anything they could steal. Which is strange considering the school had been abandoned for at the very least 5 years. I was exploring with my parents an abandoned Soviet small city where the Sodders and their families stayed. It was getting dark because of the coming storm. I found a basement and thought to just take a fast look into it. It was really dark. But I heard my mom saying on the other side of the basement corridor that she found something and I should see it. I just asked where she was. Then I heard my mom again from behind telling me to hurry up because the storm is coming and it started to rain. I was 20 at the time. But I turned around and got the fuck out of there with tears rolling down my cheeks and shaking like there's no tomorrow. I told my mom AMD, she said it's another reason to just leave ASAP. Danvers State Mental Hospital. Stumbling across an overgrown graveyard full of tiny little headstones with nothing but patient numbers, no names, no dates. The overwhelming inhumanity that all of those nameless graves represented hit me at once. I'm not easily frightened. And exploring an abandoned mental institution in the middle of the night had been an exciting adventure until that discovery. Even then, I wasn't afraid. Deeply saddened and nauseated, I lost my curiosity. I felt ashamed to be intruding on a space that had seen levels of human cruelty and suffering far beyond what I could ever imagine, so I left and never went back. Went exploring an old NATO missile site in Europe with some friends. It was so dark in one room. We almost stepped into an open lift shaft that went down about 150 feet. We didn't notice it because of other shadows on the ground when using our flashlights. Minutes later, cops pulled up to investigate the area. We didn't realize that there were motion sensors installed on the perimeter. On the way out, we nearly got locked in due to a safety on the exit door that locks closed if you don't hold a switch in the guard room next door. Me and my friends often hung outside of this abandoned factory-type building, pretty huge. At first we just hung out there on the outside, drinking and smoking weed teen stuff, but one time we decided to open up one of the boarded windows and go inside. We weren't in too far when we turned a corner and found a pile of semi-fresh blood, along with a bloody pipe and some needles. When we realized there were also people inside, homeless we assumed, deeper inside the building, we got the fuck out of there and never hung out there again. Demolished nowadays. I was looking around an old abandoned quarry near where they would process the rocks with a friend when we both hear something moving. He just blurts out "hello." And a soft voice replies "hello." We ran. Edit, Jesus, I get it, echoes exist. I promise you this was a very distinct voice. The quarry itself is actually down the road about a mile. Beyond some hills not right by where we were. There's a big abandoned factory near the center of our city that teens regularly visit. My friend was telling me a story about how she and a group of friends were walking around the ground floor, almost pitch black in places, when they saw a lone chair in the middle of a big room. They started joking about how it looked like the type of place a kidnapper would tie a victim up. When in the distance they heard glass being smashed. They all took one look at each other, turned around and got the hell out of Dodge. Scared it was someone trying to escape. An abandoned mine. We went to explore an abandoned mine/cave close to where I live. As we were going in, we were seeing a code on the walls, H2S, but thought nothing of it. We get a good amount in and found a deep shaft filled with water, so we were tossing rocks in to watch them just keep falling. Suddenly my boyfriend starts smelling rotten eggs. Knowing what rotten egg smell can be, we got out of there as fast as we could. Later that night, we googled what the code was. It was the molecular code for hydrogen sulfide. It was a good thing we got out of there as quick as we did. There's one house in my neighborhood that creeps the ever-loving shit out of me. I guess it's been abandoned for some time, because there's a dumpster in the driveway and the grass looks like it hasn't been mowed in years. But no one's attempted to buy it or refurbish it. Every time I go near the place I get the heebie-jeebies. But one night, around 2 or 3-ish in the morning, I saw the chandelier on and swaying slightly in the living room. There were no other lights on in the house, and I didn't see any people or signs of people around. I've never noped past a house so fast in my life. A couple years ago I lived in Saudi Arabia. In Saudi most foreigners like me lived in something called compounds. In these compounds there were houses and there were swimming pools and football courts and all that kinda stuff, and inside, you can do what you like. There was this one old apartment block that had been abandoned for years and all of the guards said not to go into it. One day, me and my friends snuck in and went inside. It was really creepy. There was a staircase that went straight into a wall and the pictures were all weird and we were all super creeped out. We then went into an attic and then we heard 2 men talking. We got freaked the fuck out and ran. The next day we wanted to see it again and we were less shocked since we'd already seen it. We went back into that attic and it turned out it was just 2 Bengali maintenance workers chilling. A group of us went into an old abandoned care home. We got in legally. It was pitch black, and I mean the type of darkness where you cannot see your hand in front of your face even when you let your eyes adjust. Fortunately we had a few light sources with us. After walking around and finding copious amounts of evidence that there was squatters staying there, not at the time of our arrival thank God, we found ourselves standing in a room filled with graffiti, but not graffiti from a paint can. This was spelled in dried blood and excrement. The stench was horrendous. We got out of there so quick and have never been back since. As 12-year-old kids, we were exploring the woods as kids do. The forest parted to an open field and in the distance was an abandoned farm. Naturally we crept inside, and in one of the horse stalls were all discarded hypodermic needles and old food. Our parents were quite mad when we told them what we found. I had crept an abandoned house in Seattle in the 90s. The guy had recently died. But not before hoarding 3 stories worth of groceries, unopened QVC orders and tons of ephemera. The power and water had been shut off, and he was shitting and pissing in buckets. I opened a couple of these, which would have been revolting on its own, but for some reason, he was putting wigs and toupees in with the waste. There were stacks of wigs that had yet to be put in the buckets. I did get 3 big bags of Liberty dimes before I fled in disgust. There was a coffin. A real coffin. We were in an abandoned factory that some rich family had owned. And there was this one room with a bunch of personal stuff. Letters from the 50s. Furniture. Old photographs. Clothes. Even booze. Like someone's home had been put in there. In the middle of it all a coffin. I swear. The room was gloomy. It was a late summer afternoon. No power and we didn't have flashlights. My friend was like, we gotta open this coffin. We can't leave unless we do. We gotta, and straight up lifted the lid. A sweet smell came from the darkness. When my grandmother died I was the one to find the corpse, and I remember that one quite well. So my heart skipped a couple of beats. The coffin was full of candles. They had a sweet smell. Edit, typos. Exploring an abandoned manor with some friends. We had been drinking and smoking and thought it would be cool. The ground floor entrances were covered with bricks, so we had to enter through the first floor, 8 feet height, using an improvised ladder made of old trash and wood pieces. It was quite unstable and hard to climb, and we were 5 or 6 people. Being the only way out, and knowing how slow it was, I was on edge the whole time. We were exploring the floor. Cool glass ceiling. Lots of debris. But suddenly we find a room filled with plastic containers with pink and brown liquids. Some friends decide to explore the ground floor, which was pitch black and involved going down a broken staircase missing several steps. They heard someone coughing in the dark and feel several people moving in the darkness as their eyes get used to it. At this point I was hearing someone slowly walking in a room on the first floor, carefully stepping over the broken glass on the floor, to not make noise, which was really creepy. We got the fuck away, and on our way out we saw a roughed up man with bloodshot eyes leaving a shack outside the house and staring at us. I still shiver when I remember his look. Probably just some junkies living there, but for overly high 15-year-olds it was scary as fuck. Thanks for watching.